Imagine a country where seawater flows from the tap, where 80% of all water is produced artificially and is not taken from natural rivers and lakes. It sounds unbelievable, but this is the reality of today's Israel. Today, we will tell you how a small state surrounded by deserts handled a problem that still haunts entire continents. Subscribe to the channel. It is going to be interesting. To appreciate the scale of the achievement, let us go back. The middle of the 20th century. Jewish settlers arrive on lands with an acute water shortage. The Jordan, the main source of fresh water, has to be shared with neighboring states. Underground reservoirs are being emptied much faster than they are filled by rainfall. With each decade, the situation only got worse. The population increased, industry developed, and agricultural lands grew. At the same time, there was less and less water. By the early 2000s, the country found itself in a critical position. The level in the reservoirs dropped to the lowest values in the last 100 years. Farmers received only 60% of the necessary water for irrigation. Crops were drying up. Strict restrictions on water usage were introduced in cities. People lined up for drinking water. Experts spoke of a looming catastrophe. It seemed there was simply no way out. Most countries have natural bodies of fresh water. Israel had only deserts. But no one was going to give up. And then the thought arose, what if we get fresh water from seawater? Especially since there was plenty of it. In the 60s of the 20th century, scientist Alexander Zarkin created a revolutionary technology for freezing seawater. The essence is simple. Salt and water freeze at different temperatures. When you freeze seawater, fresh ice forms and the salt remains in the liquid concentrate. In 1965, an experimental plant was built on the shores of the Red Sea in Eilat. Seawater was frozen, the ice was separated from the concentrate, then melted to get fresh water. The method worked, but there was one serious problem: the price. A cubic meter of such water cost $7–8. For mass production, this was too expensive. The plant worked for only 2 years and closed in 1967. The first attempt failed, but it became clear that cheaper technologies were needed. At the same time, other desalination methods were developing in the world. Thermal methods, for example, multi-stage distillation, were actively used in the Persian Gulf countries. They had plenty of cheap oil to heat the water. But Israel imported energy resources, so this path did not fit. The real breakthrough came with the development of reverse osmosis. The principle had been known for a long time. You take salty water and under huge pressure force it through a special membrane. The salt remains on one side and clean water passes through. It sounds simple, but it took decades to put into practice. The main difficulty was in creating the membranes themselves. A material with microscopic pores was needed, which let water molecules through but held back salt. The pore size had to be about 0.1/10,000th of a micron. This is an incredibly small value. To understand the scale, imagine this picture. If you increase the membrane pore to the size of a soccer ball, then a salt molecule will be like a basketball, and a water molecule like a tennis ball. The difference is minimal, but it is exactly what makes it possible to separate them.
By the 90s, sufficiently strong and effective membranes made of composite polymers appeared. They withstood high pressure and lasted several years. This was a technological breakthrough that made reverse osmosis economically profitable.
But the problem with energy remained. To push seawater through a membrane, you need a pressure of about 1,000 pounds per square inch. These are huge energy costs. The first installations consumed 6-7 kilowatt-hours per cubic meter of water.
Israeli engineers came up with a brilliant solution. After passing through the membrane, the concentrated brine was still under high pressure. Previously, it was simply dumped back into the sea, losing all that energy. The new system used this pressure again, pushing the next portion of seawater.
Energy recovery devices worked like a seesaw. One person goes down and pushes the other up with their weight. The pressurized brine transferred energy to the new portion of water at the inlet. Energy losses were reduced several times over. Consumption dropped to 2.5 kilowatt-hours per cubic meter. This changed everything. Desalination became not just real, it became economically justified. By the early 2000s, Israel was ready to build plants on an industrial scale. It only remained to make a decision at the state level and find funding.
The drought of 2008-2009 became a turning point. Lake Kinneret, the country's main reservoir, dropped to critical levels. The government realized that delay was impossible. A decision was made to build a network of giant desalination plants along the Mediterranean coast. The first was the plant in Ashkelon. Construction began in 2003. The scale was impressive. Huge pipes stretched from the sea to the plant buildings. Thousands of kilometers of membranes were laid in special modules. The most powerful pumps and pre-treatment systems were installed. Seawater cannot get onto the membranes immediately. It must first be cleaned of algae, plankton, sand, and other impurities. To do this, water is passed through mechanical filters treated with chemicals that do not allow bacteria to multiply and prevent the formation of scale on the membranes. Imagine a production line hundreds of meters long. Turbid, salty water enters from one end straight from the sea. Crystal clear, fresh water comes out the other end, which you can drink right away. Between them, dozens of stages of cleaning and filtration take place. The plant in Ashkelon was launched in 2005. It produced 120 million cubic meters of water a year. To visualize this volume, imagine 60,000 Olympic swimming pools filled to the brim. This was enough for 1.5 million people. But Ashkelon was only the first step. Success showed that the technology works. In 2009, a second giant was launched in Hadera. Its capacity was 127 million cubic meters per year. This plant provided water for 20% of the entire country. Each subsequent plant was built taking into account the experience of the previous ones. Technologies became better, efficiency grew, the price fell. Engineers introduced increasingly advanced energy recovery systems, used new materials for membranes, and improved every stage of production. In 2013, the main event happened. On the shore of the Mediterranean Sea near Tel Aviv, the Sorrek plant opened. It was a real masterpiece of engineering thought, the largest desalination enterprise of this type in the world. Productivity reached 150 million cubic meters per year. Sorrek occupied only 10 hectares, but incredible power was located in this small area. The plant used revolutionary membranes 16 inches in diameter with vertical installation. Thanks to this, it was possible to place more filtering surface in a smaller area. Water passed through 50,000 membranes, each working with extreme precision. The purity of the water obtained reached 99.7%. This is higher than drinking water standards in many developed countries. But the most surprising thing was the price. A cubic meter of desalinated water cost only 58 cents. This is cheaper than bottled water in a store. For comparison, in the 60s, the price was $7–8, a drop of more than 10 times in half a century. The economics of desalination turned everything upside down. An Israeli family paid about $30 a month for water. At the same time, residents of Las Vegas paid $47, and in Los Angeles, $58. Israel, with its desalinated water, turned out to be cheaper than American cities that have natural sources. By the 2020s, Israel was putting out more than 800 million cubic meters of desalinated water annually. This covered the needs of the entire population. The country that was dying of thirst now produced more water than needed. Surpluses went to restore nature. Lake Kinneret, which had been shallowing for decades, began to fill up. The water level in underground sources began to rise. For the first time in many years, nature had a chance to recover. Farmers stopped receiving cut quotas. Now they could buy as much water as needed for the harvest. Water prices for agriculture became stable. The Negev desert bloomed thanks to desalinated water and drip irrigation. But this success story has a dark side. Every day, plants dump millions of cubic meters of concentrated brine into the Mediterranean Sea. This is salty water in which there is 5 times more salt than in ordinary seawater. Brine is heavier than ordinary water. It settles to the bottom and spreads along the coast. In discharge places, salinity rises, and this hits marine life. Fish and other organisms that are used to normal salinity experience stress or die. Besides salt, chemicals used to treat the water remain in the brine. Antiscalants against scale, chlorine for disinfection, and other reagents. All this gets into the sea and affects the ecosystem. Scientists are studying the consequences. Studies show that within a radius of several kilometers from discharge points, the diversity of living organisms decreases. Coral reefs, if they are nearby, suffer from high salinity. The composition of bottom organisms changes. Israeli authorities are looking for solutions. One idea is to build long underwater pipelines that carry brine to a great depth and distribute it over a wide area. This reduces the salt concentration at each specific point. Another option is to mix brine with treated wastewater before discharge. Israel recycles 90% of wastewater. This is a world record. These waters are less salty than brine. Mixing reduces the total salt concentration. There are also more ambitious ideas. For example, use brine to save the Dead Sea. This unique lake is getting catastrophically shallow. The water level drops by more than a meter every year. The reason is the withdrawal of water from the Jordan, which used to feed the lake. The project involves building a canal from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea. Along the way, water will be desalinated, and concentrated brine will be sent to the Dead Sea to maintain the level. It sounds fantastic, but technically it is real. The question is money and political will. Another serious problem is energy consumption. Even with modern energy recovery systems, plants consume a huge amount of electricity. Most of this energy in Israel is still generated from fossil fuels, and this means carbon dioxide emissions. Israeli engineers are working to reduce the carbon footprint. One solution is solar energy. The country has more than 300 sunny days a year. Solar panels on the roofs of plants and next to them can cover a significant part of the needs. New developments include hybrid systems that combine reverse osmosis with other technologies. For example, forward osmosis based on concentration difference, which requires less energy. Studies show that energy consumption can be reduced by 40–50%. The Israeli experience has interested the whole world. California, which suffers from constant droughts, invited Israeli companies to build desalination plants. The largest installation in the Western Hemisphere in the city of Carlsbad was built with the help of Israeli technologies. The countries of the Persian Gulf, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, they are all investing billions in desalination. Israeli companies share their experience and technologies. Political contradictions fade into the background before the common problem of water scarcity. Even countries that do not yet have water problems look at the Israeli experience with interest. The climate is changing. Droughts happen more often and last longer. What today seems like a problem of distant deserts, tomorrow may become a reality for any corner of the planet. It is interesting that desalination has changed even the culture. Israelis have been learning to save every drop of water for decades. This has eaten into the mentality over years of scarcity. Now that there is enough water, the older generation still saves out of habit. School children learn that tap water is the result of an incredibly complex technological process. They go on excursions to desalination plants, see giant installations, learn how much labor is invested in every liter. This fosters a responsible attitude towards resources. Desalination has changed even politics in the region. Previously, water was a cause of conflicts. Countries fought for every cubic meter from common rivers. Israel, Jordan, Palestine, Syria, all depended on the same sources. This constantly created tension. Now, Israel can sell desalinated water to neighbors. In 2020, an agreement was signed on water supplies to Jordan. This improved relations between the countries. Water turned from a cause of conflicts into a tool for cooperation. Palestinian territories also receive water from Israeli plants. This is a difficult topic with political nuances, but the fact remains, technology helps solve humanitarian issues regardless of political disagreements. The economic impact of desalination went far beyond water supply. Whole industries grew around the plants. Production of membranes, chemicals, pumps, control systems. Thousands of engineers, technicians, and operators got jobs in this sphere. Israeli companies sell desalination technologies all over the world. This brings billions of dollars every year. A small country has become a world leader in water technologies. Knowledge and experience have turned into a valuable export commodity. Israel's experience proves that the water crisis that threatens many regions of the planet is not a death sentence. Solutions exist. They require investments, political will, and technological innovations. But they work. The country that was supposed to die of thirst now sells water to neighbors.
And what do you think? Will seawater desalination following Israel's example be able to solve the problem of water shortage in poor countries of the world? Or are completely different approaches needed? Subscribe to the channel and write your opinion in the comments. Let us discuss this together.